I am
So,
here.
yeah, Sharp. I was just explaining to Gonzo here, and I meant to put this in a Discord chat in writing, but I just kind of forgot because I've been really, really busy this past week. Um, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying about trying to expand the audience of the program. So, what I want to do now that we're moving, hopefully, from a relatively chaotic period of American governments to a more stable period is we can kind of transition the show from a strictly reactionary type of show to more of a actual show where we can have discussions about various political
That
topics. And though more,
that's that's originally what I wanted to do with the Sharpcast, but it genuinely felt the more and more things were changing in like 2016, the more and more volatile and vile things were becoming.
yeah, and like I said, I my hope is that now we're about to move to a point where we don't have to come on here every week and be like, "Oh
I
Jesus
think
Christ, what the fuck happened?"
I think the primary goal of the Sharpcast is going to be convincing people that under a Biden presidency, things aren't as volatile as they used to be.
Yeah, and well, I think the way to get around that, the way to do that is, for one thing, we don't have to come on here every week and discuss everything that Joe Biden did like we did with Trump. I mean,
No.
obviously, if something big is happening, we're going to talk about it. And again,
Yeah.
we're putting the moratorium on the Don. We won't be able to completely get rid of him just yet because the impeachment number two is going to
I
be a
think
thing. So,
I think one thing that's important to me would be talking more about policies and laws and things that need to change.
oh
Um,
yeah, absolutely. That's
but on
kind of what
top
I'm
of
hoping.
that, like, but on top of that, I've started to notice a thing like fucking post Gamergate era gaming, right? Well, like past Gamergate now,
Mhm.
and we're starting to ask the questions of what, like, how do we include LGBT people or women in gaming spaces? Does politics in gaming matter? Does politics in art matter? Those are important conversations too. I don't think we should skip on those conversations. I think those are conversations we should be having.
I absolutely agree. So, and I also wanted to. So, what I
Um,
wanted to
speaking
start
of
today. Go ahead,
speaking
Ren.
of that art discussion, I have a lot to say about that about uh, minorities and LGBT
Oh,
representation
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Well,
I know
gaming
people.
art.
I know people that do. Like I was sitting down with Mars and Ricky's group, and the primary thing he told me that kind of gets to me to this day is like when I'm having a discussion with people about black issues, I have to prove to people I'm black. He says,
Yeah,
and God, let's just call that for what it is. That shit's kind of racist.
yeah.
yeah,
Honestly, it's like I mean, you can have. There's really nothing stopping you from having it. Just because you're not black doesn't mean you should have an opinion on those issues. I mean, even if your opinion is
well,
not necessarily going to be correct, it can still be
well, it's like
wrong, but you
if
can
you
still have the opinion.
if you're half black, that doesn't mean zero black insight. That means you've got black and Filipino insight.
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'm
like
aware,
taking Ren for
even though
example.
there are people who say that I don't have any black insight. I do have black insight.
Like,
Yeah.
like,
I,
yeah, that's the thing, because like how you are
I, I,
treated.
I am both. I have both insight as both an insider and an outsider in terms of that insight.
Yeah, personally, like, and this is where I've kind of hated where radical rhetoric has gone on like racial issues, right?
Mhm.
Since when did mixed race people become the odd one out when they were the primary discussion and issue of segregation all those years ago?
Since
Yeah,
identity
Whether
politics looked at mixed
miscegenation
race,
could be tolerated and they were a byproduct of miscegenation.
I was gonna say since identity politics looked at mixed race people are like, we don't know where to put you, so we're just gonna exclude you from everything because we don't know where to put
Yeah,
you.
miscegenation.
Whereas really, we're not pointing at them and going, "You motherfuckers just did what the Klan did, and we're mad at you now."
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like,
you're a product of miscegenation, so you should go.
yeah. So, and then there we actually start seeing cores that damage the fight against racism, against misogyny, against the Klan.
Hmm.
Because if you don't have a strong core, if you're not including those people, they've got nowhere to go. And when you're alienating them from the outside looking in, you look no different than your opponent.
Why are people so eager and willing to believe something that all available evidence has shown is simply not true. Like, how the hell does that work? And there is a reason for that, actually, and it's the reason is that it's what we call the big lie, and it's basically a lie that is so outrageous that you actually kind of believe it to be true.
Well,
yeah,
I was going to say it's because of the distrust that was built within that of the distrust with the mainstream media that was built,
Well, yeah,
leading
that
to
well, you know what? Actually, Ren, that's important because genuinely, right? On a lot of these podcasts, you haven't gotten to speak that much,
yeah.
and that's disappointing. In this particular fighter conversation, it feels like you have beef. So
Hmm.
I want to give you the stage for this one.
Okay.
Like, I want to hear what you have to say on it because you do have a unique insight, and I don't want anyone to tell you that you don't.
A unique insight of a man who does not a man who would was suckered into these sort of things and came out the other side.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. Okay, so distrust of the media, it's not necessarily required for a big lie to work, but it does help a lot. Like, it does honestly help a lot.
If you wanted my personal opinion, I don't think the fact that people were going over the line when it came to like online conversation to go after, like, say, people's jobs or their personal relationships or things like that assisted in making the left not look like a social elite. like like look, we got to address the elephant in the room, right? And it's the fact that radical positions to some degree derailed the fucking cause with how aggressive they were. They just hit the fucking accelerate when they were about to hit a turnpike and flew off that fucking track. Like, that's what happened. We can't pretend like that wasn't the case, though, because we have to do things differently than we did from 2016 all throughout. Because for a while there was a doubt the Democrats could pull out a Biden presidency. And the primary anchor people would point to holding the cause down until they proved otherwise was the more progressive, more socialist style left.
Well, like I've said a million times, one of the smartest things that maybe the smartest thing the Biden campaign did was just completely cutting out Twitter. It's like, you know what? We know what Twitter says, and we're not going to be interested in that. We know what the conversation is. We know what their feelings are about things. That's nice. We also understand they are not representative of the American majority. Okay, only a fifth of Americans are on Twitter. Twitter is, it's okay for getting like a general sense of how things are, but it's not a good way to say, like, the one to just kind of describe the economy I've heard between like the Twitter user and your average Democrat voter. It was described on CNBC radio program one time. On Twitter, it's like, we got to burn everything down and destroy everything and start all over because everything's fucked. Whereas that's the Twitter progressive. Whereas the average Democrats voter is like, yeah, look, we just really want some like better gun laws and maybe some higher taxes on the rich. That's all we're kind of asking for. We're not really in the whole burn it down phase yet.
And then even Scarlet, right? Scarlet views themselves as a progressive. And Scarlet's going to be very important when it comes to addressing the left, because nobody has better insight on the progressive front or the socialist front of America than Scarlet does. Mm-hmm. And not just the socialist front as in Twitter, right? Mm-hmm. Scarlet's an actual political activist that's participated in a lot of these events and has seen the things people have to say about that. That's going to be an important perspective going forward, and I don't think you disagree with that.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I want Scarlett on more of these shows, because one of the primary things in order to bring America together in 2021 is going to be not to neglect the side of the left that matters, the active side.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, and even in your side goal here of destroying what the Republican Party's become, that's not going to happen unless the left gains more overall clout. I think you know that, though. I think to some degree you understand the only thing that can destroy that party is its opposition.
Yeah.
As begrudging as it is.
Well, it could. Ooh, look at that. Marjorie Taylor Greene just got a 12-hour Twitter ban.
Oh,
They're going left and right with this shit, ain't they? They're setting the
well,
rhetoric
Marjorie
now.
being a crazy ass batshit
Yeah,
insane
Marjorie's
lady.
Marjorie's the QAnon woman who
Yeah.
has decided she's going to try to invoke articles of impeachment on Joe Biden the day after his inauguration. It's like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah,
I have
on
to
what
admit-
grounds though?
I have to admit, though,
Spite, apparently. I don't fucking know
Ugh.
at this point.
I have
It's
to
like
admit,
Obama
though,
all over again.
I was a bit surprised with Jack Dorsey's take when they banned Trump from Twitter. It was interesting to see a company actually acknowledge, hey, the level of power we've displayed here, yeah, even we think that's dangerous.
I was going to say that misinformation, election-related misinformation dropped about 73% after Trump was kicked off Twitter. So
Was he like the bulk of misinformation?
yeah, well, he certainly was the most amplified voice. So yeah.
Yes.
What that means is when misinformation's coming from the White House, it can completely dominate the entire paradigm and shift the conversation as a whole.
And this, in many ways, is the essence of like how the big lie works, of how the big lie functions.
The
And
big
speaking-
lie was
big
coming
lie.
from the White House.
speaking of
which is what made it
misinformation.
so significant.
Speaking of misinformation, I've just gotten something from Forbes. Fox News has, within the past first few weeks of 2021, has been losing viewership and ratings. They're
Who
not
has?
dropping below CNN and MSNBC.
Yeah, they're actually third behind CNN now.
Who is?
Fox.
Fox is.
Yeah,
And I think-
that's largely because, like, later on, Fox couldn't decide whether they were on Trump's side or not.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, eventually, everything Trump touches dies came to hit Fox, and it was just like now all their viewers are going over to ON because Fox isn't Trumpy enough for them anymore. Which
Yeah,
and Newsmax and shit.
It's going to
We
be
all saw
funny
coming.
when because the current climate is justifying a crackdown on misinformation. It could be argued that ON won't stick around.
they're one or both of those is going to get bought. One or both of ON and Newsmax is going to get bought out by Trump and turned into his personal TV network.
That'll be something.
But in which case, we're going to have a national conversation about whether, like, oh my God, this is going to be a trying time in 2021, which is going to be asking like a simple question. There's a narrative to the story here, right? Every protagonist of every story represents a question. Every antagonist represents a retort, right? So the question that we should be asking is whether we can recover from this.
We can, but it's gonna take a lot of hard work, and we're gonna have to do a lot of. We're gonna have to do like a lot of.
And Trump has essentially become like from the president of the United States to the central antagonist that will revolve around 2021 unless he's in a federal prison. And even then, the idea of Trump, the force of nature that is Trump mentality, will be the antagonist of 2021. And their retort is, no, you can't. We were the ones who won.
Yeah.
And before
right.
we start,
shit.
an idea
Forgot
for
I-
a reaction, a politically charged reaction. Because the Cinema Snob has posted on his Twitter a very interesting movie that we should try and take a look at. An animated movie called Trump versus the Illuminati, The Ultimate
God.
Battle. If I could get a hold of that shit, you guys want to be in on this shit?
Yeah, sure.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. I've been talking about Holy Night to Naruto this whole time.
You'll finally get to put Holy Night Naruto right on the spotlight.
Yes.
All right.
Going forward, the one question I didn't ask anyone here was what Gonzo's political objective is here.
I kind of wish I had some, but I don't have any means to. I mean, right now I'm on the society of it, so I can't say I would like a higher wage because I don't have a job. That would be stupid of me to like advocate for that when I don't have a job. That'll probably look like something stupid. Or
Like, one thing's certain, right? When it comes to promoting our content and working together, the one thing that will help us to work together better is one unified cause we're all working towards.
Mm-hmm.
A cause that can include and shine a spotlight on the primary issues that we care about. And I personally think this is something that at this point even Scarlett could get behind, which is the idea, as crazy as it sounds, I'm sure socialist Twitter fucking hates it. The idea that America can prevail.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we are still the world's best hope.
We are
We're
still.
still the shining city on the hill.
Yeah.
We are still.
And giving people faith in that idea and giving them something to hold on to and making them believe.
Yeah.
We still have the American dream.
we just
Like if we can prove an ex-Republican, a Ohioan white guy, a socialist in Virginia, a guy on SSI benefits, and a half Filipino, half black man in California can come together, anyone can.
Okay. Listen, I am what you would call.
mixed.
I'm what you would call a black man who's always on the fringe.
Like we're essentially a collective that the extremist front of the Donald Trump right says can't come together, can't cohesively work together, cannot triumph.
Mm-hmm.
I want that idea put in people's heads. If we fail, they're laughing at us. So that's why we work together here.
Yes. No. No. When we get to the whole art situation, I'm gonna probably be dominating the conversation because I have, well, more so because I'm working on art myself, and working on a story that has been 5 years in the making.
Yes. Good. I
And
want
those
to.
5 years were mostly me second guessing how I want the story to go and people and other people's input and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is another thing, right? And this is something that could, I think, both be divisive and unifying depending on how we address it. Is it, like, when it comes to the polarization in the United States, is it necessarily that we don't agree with X cause, or is it that we don't agree with who's representing it? With who's essentially representing us? Like, when we talk about fighting fascism in the streets, is that Yvette Falarka lady the person we think about? Does it feel like she represents us when it comes to the fight against fascism?
I feel like the fight against fascism is broadly dominated by the types of people who would call any sort of existence of a state to be fascism.
I prescribe this idea that at any given point, if you want to and you have the clout behind you, you could leave one group that represents a particular cause and just start another group that represents that same cause if you don't like the way things are run.
Well, that's basically what the Lincoln Project did.
Yeah. The Lincoln Project proves you can do that, though. The Lincoln Project proves that viable.
Mm-hmm.
So then, in that standard, that's kind of what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, We are so different on the political spectrum and aisle when it comes to how we think things should be ran, when it comes to our opinions and experiences in life. Again, to the Trump front, we're the group that shouldn't work. We're the group that shouldn't function or triumph in this endeavor. But groups exist out there that prove this can work.
They absolutely do.
So then, we're essentially a question to the world. Can we come back together? Can we recover from this shit? Is there still hope for America, for Christ's sake?
Well, let's hope there is. I might as well. I mean, that's not really much else to add to that, except, this is this next 4 years are going to be the true test, see how well we can recover from this. And that's kind of why I wanted to start with talking about the big lie, because, I mean, everyone says we have to talk to these people, we need to understand them, or whatever it is, understand the people that voted for Trump. I'm at the point where my thing is this, okay? I don't think I'm not particularly interested in understanding someone who wanted to overthrow my government, okay? I don't really particularly care what their life is like, what their values are, or whatever. It's like, you commit a sedition against my country, fuck you. At the same time, however, I do want to know why they ended up getting radicalized. What could have led to,
Yeah.
I'll talk about this in the actual show when I get into the big lie. There was a school teacher.
Yeah.
One of the people that went to the rally at the Capitol building was a school teacher from Ohio. And this wasn't like some crazy internet 4chan type user. They were just like a school teacher who worked with special needs kids. She went to the rally. She stormed the Capitol building. And the very next day, she resigned. And her resignation letter actually said that she was resigning to fight the cabal of pedophiles that had infiltrated the U.S. government and it was killing all the kids. She literally resigned to become a QAnon crazy. Now, of course, she was now arrested and is facing up to 2 years in federal prison, so good luck with that. But when you look at how could someone go from being like an ordinary school teacher who actually is a credit to their community to someone who tries to overthrow the U.S. government, and the answer is the big lie. The big lie makes you do that.
Yeah. And and then most of that dissection would be, where does the big lie come from? Who tells the big lie? Which is the White House.
Yep.
And what sort of doubts form, or what sort of people create the doubts that help the big lie to prosper?
Exactly.
In reality, it seems like when you're talking about the big lie, everything, including the left itself, is relevant. So, when it comes to radicalization on the opposite side, did that convince people of the big lie? I don't know. You go around and ask people, it genuinely seems like it did convince them of the big lie. It actually seems like certain people going a little too extreme when it came to progressive rhetoric convinced people of the big lie, whether we want to believe that or not.
Yeah, that certainly absolutely could be a factor. How much of it is a factor remains to be seen, but that may indeed have something to do with it.
I think when it comes to extreme rhetoric, it just has to be fine-tuned to say, if you roll your eyes at a radical Trump supporter, you should roll your eyes at someone who says we should burn America down over the slightest transgression. These things should just be one and the same. The people who outright spew this rhetoric, and the enablers that make people doubt progressive policy.
Like I said, there's a reason that I call Antifa a bunch of goons. There's a reason for that.
And the reason Scarlett will beam you over the head.
Yeah. It's like, look,
because
you don't have to like it, but maybe if they'd spend a little bit more time actually educating people about what fascism is and how to stop it, and less time yelling at Charlie Kirk, then maybe they might be able to get somewhere. I don't know. That's just...
I think the hardest thing, right, when it comes to moving forward, is going to be getting Scarlett on board with the idea that a moderate Democratic candidate is more beneficial for progressivism than a hardcore radical who wants to burn the shit to the ground.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously that's a pretty. I mean, it's tough, to hear that your policies aren't simply can't win politically right now. I mean, that could change soon, but as much as you may not like the fact that you have Joe Biden in office for the next 4 years, it's like you're gonna need a guy like Joe Biden if you're gonna make your way in. It's like I once made a comment which actually got the Rick Wilson approval that sometimes progressives, it sometimes feels like they want to skip the Normandy landings and go right to invading Berlin.
What
It's
what
like-
gets what gets complicated is these times are so trying and there's so many different perspectives, right? So when it comes to why people riot, one shoe size does not fit all, and if we act like that, we're acting pretty arrogant.
Oh yeah,
When it comes to why people revolt or rebel, one shoe size does not fit all, yada yada yada, right? If we don't do a good job being tactful in why our country is falling apart, we can't fix it.
no,
So I think one big mistake political commentators make is to 100% go all in and try to just bury the idea into people's skulls that there should be no reason people are rioting. There is a reason people are rioting.
Yeah.
To pretend like there's not a reason this shit happened is naive, and it will never work in de-radicalizing people from those ideas if you cannot acknowledge there's a problem in the first place.
yep, and it's going to be, and the important thing is right now is going to be looking 74 million people in the face and telling them like, look, you were lied to. Like all these things that you believe that you were told about why things are going on in this country, almost everything, almost everything, but a lot of the stuff that you were told was an outright lie. The biggest one, of course, being that Donald Trump won the election. He did it. That's the biggest lie of all. And that big lie resulted in 5 people dying in our nation's capital.
Not to mention, every conversation contradicts itself. It's going to be really difficult to skew through the bullshit. Like, here's what's weird, right? There is a side of things where the anti-immigration side of things ties to fighting climate change because of population swell.
Yeah, that's where intersectionality comes in and everything gets all kinds of screwed up.
Yeah, exactly. How do we straighten that shit out?
That's a whole different conversation. It's going to take a hell of a lot longer to get all that sorted out, I can tell you that.